Hi friends, I'm Amy from Amy Latta Creations, and this year I'm so excited to be a part of the Tombow Creator Crew. That means I get opportunities like this one to share with you some of the different ways that I love to use Tombow markers. I do all kinds of art and craft projects, but my favorite and my specialty has to be hand lettering. I've always loved handwriting of all kinds and styles, and when I first saw Brushscript style, it just took my breath away. I loved it and wanted to do that with my own handwriting. The first way that I learned how to do that before I mastered brush technique was something I like to call faux calligraphy. It's really simple to do, and we're going to look at it together today so that you can be hand lettering like a pro in no time. All you need to get started is a Tombow marker. We're going to start with a dual brush pen, and we're actually going to use the end that's not the brush tip, the little bullet tip on the other side. We're going to grab one of those and some scrap paper, and let's get started. Faux calligraphy is one of two ways that we can get the handwriting style known as Brushscript. But what exactly is that? If we take a closer look, you'll notice that a word written in Brushscript has a special characteristic. Within every single letter, there's a combination of thinner lines and thicker lines. You can choose any letter at all, and you'll see that it has those two types of lines inside of it. So that leaves us with the question, how do we make that happen? Well, when we write, anytime that we're writing or drawing on a piece of paper, our pen is moving in one of three basic directions. Sometimes our pen is moving up away from us on the paper, and that is something we call an upstroke. If our pen is moving down toward us on the paper, we call that a downstroke. Then, of course, sometimes we have to cross our T's or our capital H's and things like that, which causes our pen to move across the paper horizontally. So I'm about to share with you the number one most important rule in this style of writing, and that is that downstrokes are thick. Everything else remains thin. So downstrokes are our thicker lines. Anywhere our pen was moving down on the paper is going to be the thick part. When our pen changes direction, we're going to leave that part thin. So with that in mind, let's take a look at a simple word. We're going to start with one of my favorite words, which is joy. It's short, sweet, simple, and something we could all use more of in our lives, right? So I've written the word joy in script, and what I'm going to do is go back into that word and ask myself, where was my pen making a downstroke? When we start writing a J, our pen is moving away from us up on the paper, so we're going to leave that thin because it's an upstroke. Here on this bar of the J, we're going to make a downstroke. So what we're going to do is make a second line, and that's going to help us to artificially thicken the first line that we drew. So all we do is draw a second line next to the first one, fill it in, and now it looks like that part of our J is thicker than the rest. As I got down to the bottom here where my pen would change directions and start moving into an upstroke, you'll notice that I stopped my second line. Then our next downstroke comes here on the left side of the O. Once again, I'm just going to draw a second line, and then I'm going to color that space in between the lines, which makes it look like that part of the O is thicker than the rest. If you draw your O with a loop the way that I do, you're going to want to do this part of the loop as well. If you're someone who writes your O like this with no loop, all you have to worry about is the left side, like so. Then we come over to the Y. This left side of the Y is a downstroke. Our pen was moving down toward us when we wrote it, so that means it gets a second line and it gets colored in. Then we change directions going back up. Here we're coming down again, so we make our second line, and you'll notice again that I taper that off a little bit as I get to the part where my pen is going to move in a different direction. I'm going to color in my downstroke. And then of course this part is an upstroke, so we leave it as is. And that gives us the word joy written in our faux calligraphy method, which makes it look like Brushscript. So let's go through that same word again together. If you have a piece of scrap paper and a bullet tip marker like this end of the Tombow Dual brush pen, that's all you need to practice this skill. So we're going to write the word joy in script, and now that we kind of have an idea what we're doing, we're going back in, we're finding those downstrokes. So remember, it's this downstroke of the J, the left side of the O, the loop, the left side, and the descender, the downward part here of the Y, and those are our thick parts of the word. So your joy should look something like this. As I always tell all of my students and those who read my books, anytime that you're worried about perfection, stop. You're never ever going to be perfect, but practice makes progress. The more you do this, the more naturally and easily it will come. You'll recognize where the downstrokes are, and you will be able to do this pretty much in your sleep, believe it or not. I know right now there's a lot of thinking involved, but eventually it becomes muscle memory, just like anything else that your body knows how to do. Your hand will know how to do this as well. Now that we've done the word joy a few times, I want to point out that there are some variations that you can do with this. First of all, you can try writing your letters larger and see how that makes a difference. So here, we're just going to write a bigger joy. We're doing the same steps. We're drawing that second line, we're coloring it in. It just takes a little bit more effort this time since we have a bigger space. And that's going to give us a different effect than when we were writing smaller. In the same vein, we can write our joy smaller and see what happens. So you can play around with this, just remembering that the one rule is that the downstrokes are the thick areas and upstrokes are thin. You can play around with writing your words with the letters close together. You can space your letters out more, leaving more room for that double stroke. And once again, you'll see that you get different effects for your modern calligraphy. So this is just something really fun to experiment with as you play around and learn and find your own style. Now, of course, joy isn't the only word that we're going to want to learn how to write. So now I want to challenge you to try a new word. We're going to try the word love. And so I'm going to write L-O-V-E. Now don't worry if you form your letters a little bit differently than I do. Every lettering artist and every person has their own unique handwriting, and we love that. That's what gives us each our own style. So as you're writing, all you have to do is ask yourself, where was my pen moving down? And that's where we do our downstroke magic. So on an L, we were making an upstroke, and as we get to the top, we switch to a downstroke, which means we need that second line. We already know from the word joy where our magic spots are on the O. In the letter V, you'll notice we came down on that left side, we went back up. I put a little loop on my V. You're welcome to imitate that if you like, or if you just connect it right over to your E, don't worry about that spot. Then on the E, it's that left side once again. So this is what the word love looks like, at least in my script, when I put in the double lines. Now all that's left to do is to go back, color in between those lines, and it gives us that thickening. So now each letter has a contrast between thick and thin lines, giving us that Brushscript effect that everyone loves. So this is it, friends. This is faux calligraphy. We're just making sure that we know if we're making an upstroke, a downstroke, or a horizontal stroke. And then for every downstroke, we're going to double the line and we're going to color it in. And that's going to give us the thickness that makes a beautiful contrast within every letter of every word that we write. On my website at amylattacreations.com, I have tons of free printable practice pages, and the Tombow website has lots of resources as well, and they will show you the full alphabet written in this style. One of the hardest things about trying a new word, let's say I wanted to try my dog's name, which is Pumpkin. I haven't written a P yet, so I'm not sure where the downstrokes are. Now, certainly you can think to yourself, okay, I wrote this P, I went up, I went down, I went up, I went down, and you can go through and figure it out just like that. But sometimes it helps to have a handy reference alphabet. So if you check out my free printable pages at amylattacreations.com, or you can browse over at tombowusa.com, you'll find different printable practice pages and tutorials and things there as well. And you'll find sample alphabets that you can use as a reference guide to show you not necessarily exactly how to form your letters, but where those thick parts of the letters should be. So I hope that gives you a quick idea of how to do faux calligraphy and to turn your handwriting into some hand-lettered art.